For some of you that know me, my name is Jeremy Hunt. I kind of started in fishing in Taneycomo about 15 years ago. I've always loved the White River. I've always came down here and fished it. But I moved here a year ago for Blue Ribbon and started guiding for Blue Ribbon. I lived on Denton Ferry in Rainbow Heights neighborhood, and I literally I guess I would say this whole last year, I devoted a lot of time to streamer fishing. Due to the fact that Larry and I had taken a group from Michigan out, and they actually taught us a lot. We didn't really teach them anything. They didn't care about fishing on the bottom. They wanted to throw streamers. And it was good for me because it didn't allow any pressure for me to learn what they were going to teach. And so we floated the Norfork one day. We moved a bunch of fish. We didn't land anything big, but it got my attention on these river systems are built for streamers, and there's not a lot of people doing it. A lot of people want to fish on the bottom with indicator rigs and so on. So I literally spent 800 hours this winter fishing from wildcat to codder. That's really where I spent a lot of my time. Learning the different CFS levels, where these browns, how they shift to banks. There's a lot to it, but one thing that I will say about streamer fishing is you can find big fish fairly easy if you throw big flies. Whether you catch them, that's another story, but if you literally if you put it at the dam one day and you floated to wildcat, and you floated from wildcat to, ranchette or something like that, if you did that and you spent one whole time fishing one bank with one fly, that's it. Don't try to fish several flies. What you're trying to do is dial in to move fish. So I started changing colors, but the first thing I did was I wanted to fish one side and figure out what would attract these fish. And to make a long story short, I moved big fish every single down, everything I threw. But two colors that really stand out the most is yellow and olive. And I would say yellow is the biggest color, not only for streamers, but for any fly. And don't ask me why. You can tie a nymph, it can be yellow. But yellow, it just attracts fish. It gets their attention. This fly, for instance, right here, this is something I came up with. It's basically, I'm a big fan of marabou. I think it moves fish because this undulates a lot. And it's soft. So, you throw this in the water and, nothing small is going to eat this. It's going to be a big fish. And one day, I caught two 31-inch browns in one day within 30 minutes of each other fishing this fly. So, when you have results like that, then you start really trying to figure out yellow. So really, I dialed in yellow. I put all the colors away, and I went to yellow. I floated the banks. And one thing I've learned is, in this river system, when you're fishing, I'd say 4,000 CFS or bigger, it'll start moving fish to the banks. They can hold in the middle, fairly easy in 25, 1 or 2 units. But once they get 3 or 4 cranking, and they continually crank it, it's going to actually move these fish every day. There's going to be more fish moved to the side of the banks. So that's kind of what you've got to do. And you can find these fish fairly easy. Now all you got to do is just go back because they're always going to be there. But if it's a different CFS level, then you've got to, change it up, maybe go to the other side of the bank, and then you'll start figuring out what side these fish go to. They don't just hold on both sides. They'll switch. I'll tell you probably the best spot on that whole river is those docks between wildcat and codder. Right there where what's that, rainbow hole or whatever it's called, or airport hole or whatever, where the airport planes and all that stuff are, all the docks. Each one of those docks has big fish, and that last dock has the most. I've probably caught 6 or 7 fish in the 28-inch range just on that one section right there, and it's a deep pool. Even when it's lower water conditions, it's deeper there, and that just seems to be where they migrate. So there's a few pointers if you guys want to go out and do this stuff. Now, I'll talk a little bit about current. See, a lot of thing that dictates the streamer bite is knowing exactly how to get that fly down. If it's riding just under the surface, you're not going to move a lot of fish. But it doesn't have to be on the bottom either. But it has to be in the water column. So if you're fishing 4 to 6 feet deep, you've got to get that thing at least 2 or 3 feet below the surface if you really want to move fish. That's kind of why I like between 4,000 to 9,000 CFS. You get over 9,000, you're starting to really just practice your cast because you're not going to find a lot of fish in that kind of water. But if you come 14 miles and you float and you cover 14 miles, you're going to cover some ground, you're going to catch something, but you're trying to target areas. You know, it's like if you're fishing higher CFS, you need to throw closer to the bank, and you only need to strip it like 3 or 4 times. If you don't get a hit on that 3 or 4 times, then you're probably not going to get the fish anyways. But if you're in lower conditions where you've got the same water depth from here to that wall, you can make a 60-foot cast and run that thing all the way across because you're in the strike zone the whole time. And I went to the dam last week, and I was throwing streamers, and I was just taking the back hook off of here. I mean, these are called circus peanuts. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these flies. They're just 2-hook articulated, overgrown woolly boogers. But for instance, this is just a straight woolly, but it's articulated, so it's got a little bit more movement. And that's real key on triggering these fish. If it's just a streamlined fly and it doesn't have anything, this fly is actually working for you. It's got more going on than just you stripping it. It's actually working for you, even though you're stripping. This thing's doing some other stuff too. And they've started tying foam on the back of these as well, and that imitates like a jerk bait. So it's totally different presentation. So when I'm talking about current is when the currents, there's a lot of S formations in the current. Okay, so you get these guys that are throwing these lighter grain weight lines, let's say 100, 200, 300 sinking lines, 300 grain lines. You wouldn't believe this, but that's not getting down. If you're in still water, and that's kind of how they gauge the IPS, the inches per second, on how the rate of the fall is going to be. Well, when you play current in that, current's actually keeping that up. It's not getting down. So I'm throwing 9 weights, 10 weights with 400, 550 grains, and I'm literally only getting down probably 4 feet, and that's only in 4 to 9,000 CFS. So I can only imagine if we're trying to really get it down in 15 feet of water and get down 6 feet, you'd almost need maybe 12 weight. I mean, it's almost like saltwater fishing because you've got to get that thing down. That's the key. Now they will come and hit it on the surface, but if it's not in the strike zone, it's not going to happen. And browns, these big browns are all over this river system, and they are just like bass. They eat just like bass. They're predatorial. I've had times where I threw the fly and it went in 5 seconds and he was already on it. So if you put it in their face, they're going to eat it. But they're aggressive, So just think about that, the CFS, because if the current's strong, you're going to definitely need to get some heavier weight grains to get it down. I really personally throw 9 weights more than anything, just because that fly gets down more than any other. I have a 275 grain that I throw in an 8 weight, and I use that in, I'd say, minimal current conditions. But if I'm in raging water, I'm throwing 450 grains with 9 weights. And I'll touch a little bit about that too. I broke 4 rods, and I broke them from carelessness of not understanding these grain lines. If you throw these, if you don't balance these out, okay, and you're throwing a 400 grain on an 8 weight, and it's a softer rod, it's not a stiff rod, well, it's going to flex that rod a lot, and eventually it's going to just wear that rod out, and then you're going to catch that fish of a lifetime and your rod snaps. That happened 4 times to me, and so I started figuring out you need a stiff rod, and it's for 2 things. One is it really casts well, and you really don't feel the fly, because now they've evolved into relying on the forwardness of the head of that grain. So like, let's say they build these with a sinking line, a floating line, but the 36-foot head is all weight. Well, that weight is what you're filling. You never fill the weight of your fly, so it's kind of opposite from what everybody's used to. Sometimes you guys will throw a heavy fly on just a floating line and it's real hard to cast. Well, they kind of started figuring out, well, let's just kind of do the same thing conventional fishing does, where we'll rely on the weight of the line of the head to carry the rest out. So it's almost like you have running line, so it's like the weight of the lure, and then you have skinny monofilament line, that lure's carrying that line out. Well, it's opposite in fly fishing, it's the weight of the line versus the fly. But now they're starting to understand that if they can have a little help from getting that head of that sinking line, of that sinking line to help carry your fly, then you can really shoot line. You can shoot, with 1 cast, you can pump out 40 feet, and the head of that is actually carrying out that line. It's really not the caster anymore, so it's a lot easier. I've had clients say, well, I can't throw this. Well, they get it in their hand and they throw it all the way to the bank, and they